The following news flash is brought to you by the Lone Star Lowdown, providing your daily bulletins for the commodities market. Today in history, news updates, and the inside scoop into the tides of the alternative. Markets for Wednesday, March 2nd, 2016 are currently trading with gold at $1,240 an ounce, silver $14.98 an ounce, Texas crude $34.40 a barrel, and Bitcoin is currently sitting at about 429 U.S. currency. Today in history, the year 1807, the U.S. Congress passes an act to prohibit the importation of slaves into any port or place within the jurisdiction of the United States. However, the widespread trade of slaves within the South was not prohibited since the children of slaves automatically became slaves themselves. The act prohibiting importation of slaves of 1807 went into effect January 1st, 1808. The beginning of U.S. abolition was today in history. In recent news, President Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama will both appear later this month at South by Southwest. The president is scheduled to take part in a discussion on March 11th with Evan Smith, editor of the Texas Tribune, on civic engagement and the role of innovative technology in increasing participation in politics and even solving major problems like climate change. On March 16th, the First Lady will be discussing her Let Girls Learn initiative, which aims to help an estimated 62 million girls around the world have access to basic higher education. This will make the Obamas the first president and First Lady to appear at South by Southwest in its 30-year history. Lawyer Jose Refugio Rodriguez said today that his client, drug lord Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, said he wants to be extradited as soon as possible to the United States because guards at the Mexican maximum security prison aren't letting him sleep. Mr. Rodriguez is wanting to negotiate with the U.S. authorities for a lighter sentence and a stay at a medium security prison instead. Radio Formula reported El Chapo fears that his health will worsen because of the isolated conditions in the Mexican prison and the possibility that the lack of sleep could cause a heart attack or a stroke. The process of extradition may take up to a year. The world's biggest seller of corn and soybean seeds and the maker of Roundup weed killer, Monsanto Corporation, issued a profit warning today. They are forecasting a cut to the midpoint of its fiscal 2006 profit by at least 11%. This is after they announced laying off 3,600 employees, roughly 16% of its global workforce. Monsanto shares recently went down 7.5% and have shed a total of 29% during the past year. This is Rick Brody with your lowdown for March 2nd, 2016.
Good afternoon, Austin, Texas. This is Nourishment for the Spiritual Warrior on the Logos Radio Network. We're going to be on from 2 to 4 p.m. Central Time. We are all spread out around the world now. This is Ryan Metzel. I am here in Austin, Texas. We have Dr. Elisa Wampole, who was in the studio with me last week, but she is now in Las Vegas. How is everything in Las Vegas, Elisa?
Hi, everyone. Las Vegas is great. It's so hot here, actually. We're supposed to have a cold spell this weekend, but I literally had to turn on my air conditioner, and it's beginning of March. It's crazy. But Las Vegas is nice. It's really sunny and warm. And for the wintertime, I'm not complaining.
Beautiful. And then the rest of the crew we have are still in Australia. So how are things out there, guys?
It's really great. Yeah, we're still in Sydney. Been staying near the beach, checking out still all the different vegan health food places, organic stores, etc. So it's been a really great time. Nice relaxing meditations by the ocean. And yeah, I have nothing but good things to say about Sydney.
Excellent. And in the studio with me today, I have Sam, who is part of getting water fluoridation out in San Marcos. Like to say hi to everyone, Sam?
Oh, I'm real happy to be here, and I think this is a fantastic story, so thank you for having me in to talk about it.
Absolutely. Could you give us a little background, I guess, about how you got started with it? And I guess we'll go from there, because this is something I would love to eventually see implemented at Austin.
Yeah, the way I got started in it is I had a friend who came up to me one day and shoved some papers in my hand and said, "What do you know about fluoridation?" I'm like, "I don't know, man. Since I was a kid, I've always heard it was kind of good. But I've also heard there's another side of the story. I've never really looked at it." She's like, "Well, read this. So I spent a little time going through the paper she gave me, and she said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Well, if it is what it sounds like, we've got a problem on our hands, but we need to know what we're dealing with." So we put together a little research project among 3 or 5 of us, and we kind of convinced each other how dangerous it was. Going through and, looking at some science and looking at the reviews of some science papers. So when we figured out what a big problem we thought it was, we started to gather people together. And we did it through an organization that I helped found, Hayes Constitutional Republicans. And we got them together and said, "Hey, do we want to do anything about this?" So we made the case over a couple of months to the organization. And when we took a vote whether or not to pass a resolution, I think it was like 45-0 in favor of passing a resolution to the San Marcos City Council. So we embarked on about 1.5 years of political activities around the council and city manager and the water department, trying to spread the word. We made binders 3 inches thick of all the research and articles about it and resources for them to go check. And when they handed those back to us months later, there wasn't a dog-eared page in any of those binders. I don't think they ever looked at it. So, we went through a few political rounds and then decided we had to take it out of their hands. And we put together a city charter amendment petition. So in the state of Texas, citizens have the right to go out and do a petition of our neighbors and voters and hand it in. And if you meet the requirements, which we did, we knew what we were doing, it should go on the ballot to vote. It wasn't quite that simple. There was court case and everything. But, that's the quick summary of it.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And we got on the ballot last November. It wasn't exactly the language that we wanted on there. The city council we'll get to that in a second, but we got the amendment passed by a vote of 61 to 39 percent. And so fluoride is right now not being added to the San Marcos water supply, so that freed about 50,000 people. And then what we found out, we didn't even know this when we were doing it, but what we found out is the water injection point for the water supply to Kyle, to Buda, to Goforth water supply, and I think 2 smaller water supplies, it was all fed from the same fluoridation injection point. So instead of just freeing 50,000 people, we actually wound up freeing close to 100,000 people from fluoridation.
Wow, that's awesome. That shows you what a difference, I guess, individuals can make.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Yeah.
And how long did it take from the time that you got those papers in your hand to actually getting the vote on the ballot for whether or not to fluoridate the water?
Yeah, the state law governed city charter amendments, and they had a window. You have to collect those signatures within a 6-month window. And we started doing it over the wintertime, which, if you're into the petitioning process, the wintertime is notoriously bad for it because the weather's iffy and it's cold and rainy sometimes and the days are short. So you're kind of stuck to a few hours on the weekend. So we just made it work, and we handed in our petition on April, I believe it was 2nd. And we asked them for 2 weeks to review it and count them up and give approval, and they asked for a month. And they never bothered to count the petitions on there. They ruled our petition invalid because we didn't have a number of other items on the petition sheet. They wanted each page notarized by the collector and a few other things. But all of that is outside of state law. So they tried to impose additional requirements upon us. And so a couple of months, we were going back and forth in city council chambers. We had our attorney write a couple of letters explaining the law and what the requirements and duties were. And then the last step of that process was the demand letter. And that's from the attorney saying, if you don't fulfill your obligations, we're going to have to sue you. Well, we sent that one afternoon, and by the end of the day, they had already filed suit on us. The city of San Marcos filed suit on me and 2 other people individually, and then our unincorporated association as well. So we were suddenly subjects of a lawsuit.
What were they actually filing the suit against you with? What type of claims?
Yeah, I've had a lot of people ask me that, and even when I try to explain it to attorneys, they get real puzzled look on their face. Basically, what they were trying to do is get a hearing in front of a judge. And they were asking the judge to, I guess, exempt them from state law and how they looked at this. And in order to get in front of a judge, they had to have an active suit. And in order to have an active suit, you have to have defendants. So they named us as defendants and asked for attorney's fees. We won in court. It took a little bit of time to get there. This was summer of last year, so summer of 2015. I think we had our court date in late July, early August. And the 22nd State District Court Judge Bruce Boyer ruled in our favor and said, no, they followed state law. You're trying to put additional requirements on there, and you couldn't do that if you wanted to because there's already court precedent that said they can't. So they knew it was a fallacious lawsuit. We won. They immediately appealed. So that lawsuit is still sitting in appeals court. What is it, March 5th now? And that's from early August or late July, and it's still sitting in appeals court.
Wow.
But yeah, because there was so much political interest in the area, and I guess the city council was getting an earful for the shenanigans that they were pulling, they went ahead and put a amendment on the ballot. As I mentioned earlier, it wasn't ours. Ours required two things. One was that they not add any fluoridation chemicals to our water, and the second piece was you're not going to receive fluoridated water to serve to us. And just because the way the water systems are all coming out of Lake Dunlap, GBRA, I mean, that was what we had to do for it. So when the city council put their charter amendment up, it was that the city of San Marcos would no longer add the hydrofluorosilicic acid, but they left out, they carved around the received fluoridated water, and I believe that they intend to use that in the future to deliver fluoridated water to us. So we've got to be on our toes, and we've still got a few steps to go through.
That's pretty incredible. Wow. So when did it finally pass, and when did the water fluoridation stop for the time being?
Yeah, I think the November election, if I'm not mistaken, was the 3rd.
Okay.
And you'd think that would still be embedded in my brain, but I've slipped a few times since then. And so, I mean, that was a great day. I mean, it was so fun working the polls that day, just, getting the thumbs up and the high fives from people coming out. We were hitting every person going into the polling places. We had them all covered down there. So it was a big day, had a nice celebration that night and the nights that followed. And I believe it was November 12th that the city of San Marcos officially stopped adding the fluoride chemical. And they put a nice little thing up on the website that said, hey, we no longer fluoridate. And they, made it sound like it was their idea, which made me really happy. I don't care, who gets credit. But, it's weird since then. In the local paper, there's been a number of articles written on fluoridation, and the city has been putting out press releases saying we've got to look after children's teeth health now that we're not fluoridating. So, I sense that we're not finished with it, but as of November 12th, to answer your question, yeah, we've been fluoride free. Beautiful.
That's amazing. What was the people's reception as you were, out there putting this information out and trying to get voters to take your side? How did most people receive the idea that fluoridation was actually not a good thing? And did you have to do a lot of education?
Yeah, in fact, our entire process was about education. We use social media to get the story out there and to get articles put out there, Facebook and, such things. And I think the probably biggest part of the education was when we were doing the petitioning. And I don't want to skip over too easily. I highly recommend that if you're interested in making a change in your hometown, is that you get familiar with the state election law on city charter amendments. It's a really powerful way to go about petitioning. So we were going door to door, registered voters, and we took a little half-page yellow card front and back that pretty much told the story. And you can tell this story in 30 to 40 seconds. To get, by the time that before you even get finished with that, you've got people reaching for your clipboard and your pen to sign on. And basically the argument is this. The fluoride that they're putting in our water is not what dentists use on children's teeth. It's actually a waste product from phosphate fertilizer manufacturing. It contains lead. It contains arsenic. The EPA considers it a hazardous waste. They're not allowed to dump it in landfills, rivers, lakes, or oceans. Well, by the time I got that far through the pitch, they're already reaching for the clipboard. And so we leave them a little card behind so that you can say, hey, it's going to be on the ballot in November. We're going to need your vote. So that was probably the greatest public awareness thing we could do, is going door to door through the neighborhoods, addressing people one-to-one on the doorstep. Once we got it on the ballot, I'd say that we knocked every registered voter's door in that town probably 1.5 times. So, an issue like this, you're going to win on the doorstep.
Excellent.
Yeah.
We're going to a break right here, Sam. But yeah, more with Sam here after the break on North.
This is the Logos Radio Network.
We'll be right back.
Hello, this is David Burke. I'm here in beautiful Sydney, Australia, in Coogee Beach, live with Andrew Lucky True-Lichtenberger.
Hello, everybody.
And we're joined by our team, Dr. Elisa Wampole in beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada.
Hey, everyone.
And also Sam Brannon and Ryan Mutzel in the Austin, Texas studio. How is everyone going?
Beautiful. Sam is freeing people of fluoridated hydrofluorosilicic acid. So let my people go.
Amen.
And I'm just going to bring up, just before we had the break, we're going into some of the basics of fluoride and the issues that are with fluoride and the victory that San Marcos, with Sam and his group of, had removing the fluoride from the water. But here's Sam and San Marcos isn't alone in the world. A lot of other people's viewpoints in the world is that fluoride has no reason to be in water. And here's a list from alternativehealthworks.com, a website which anyone can look on. It says that in Austria, toxic fluoride is not added. In Belgium, in Finland, it's not added also, and authorities have known there are better ways to stop cavities than fluoride. It's not being added and rejected now in Germany. It's not being added in Denmark. It's not being added in Sweden, Norway, Netherlands, Hungary. In Japan, which knows that calcium fluoride is the type needed, not industrial fluoride, that may help some type of body conditions. In Israel, they recently announced the ban. Israel recently announced the ban as well, and as are parts of Africa. And also, we have now a study that came out that recently, a Harvard study, according to the article on alternativehealthworks.com, that fluoride has been linked to cancer risk and a risk of lower IQ in children. So, Sam, with educating people in the area of Marcos in Texas, earlier, just before the break, you're talking about where you're explaining what fluoride is. Can you explain to our listeners what fluoride is, please?
Yeah, it's a waste product from phosphate fertilizer manufacturing. You know, you see we call them smokestacks, but in the industry they call them scrubbers. And they're designed to remove chemicals from the pollution that's being put out, and it captures the hydrofluorosilicic acid. It's scraped directly from those smokestacks. It's put in drums and shipped to your local water supplies. And as I mentioned, they're not allowed to dump it in landfills, rivers, lakes, or oceans, but that's the process. And it's hazardous material. The people handling it have to wear hazmat suits. If you look at the material safety data sheet, they tell you it's dangerous, and it's quite something to think that they've ever begun putting this in our water. But now people are waking up.
Yeah, even in China, they've woken up, and in China, fluoride is also on the ban list.
Really? That's great news. It was the Lancet Neurology, I think it was February of 2014, when they classified fluoride as a neurotoxin. And, that's kind of the Lancet's the oldest and arguably the most highly regarded medical journal in the world. And that was a really big step forward because, there's 70 years of propaganda that's been going on that's pro-fluoride. It's really difficult for scientists to get papers published on real science that shows how dangerous it is to us.
Sam, do you know why it even started? We even started putting fluoride in the water. Because you mentioned it's not the same fluoride as what the dentist uses to put on the child's teeth. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. What the dentist uses is sodium fluoride.
Okay.
And that's more pharmaceutically prepared. The naturally occurring fluoride in the groundwater is calcium fluoride, and that's not really a concern because in most places it's in such low quantities, and because the way the calcium bonds with the fluoride, it kind of just passes through the system. But what they're giving us is something entirely different. Okay.
And what about the fluoride in the toothpaste?
Well, again, it's the sodium fluoride. It's the one that dentists recommend and that they put on teeth. As Dr. Paul Conant of the Fluoride Action Network has told us time and time again, there is not a single function in the body that requires fluoride. So, if you're going to use it, if you think it's good, it's best to use it topically. The toothpaste, the dentist tell you do not swallow, spit that out, rinse your mouth. But there's no reason that we should be ingesting it in the least. And I wouldn't use, once I became educated, I stopped using fluoride toothpaste immediately.
Excellent, man. We had another guest
just looking at with countries, such as we've listed that have banned fluoride. I mean, it's not like their teeth are falling out or anything. A lot of people there, a lot of teeth.
Yeah, and in fact, according to the World Health Organization data, and here's what you need to understand about the way this stuff is talked about in the media and by the quote-unquote scientific community, World Health Organization. They wrote a paper that said, hey, in these countries that are fluoridating, tooth decay has come down, 30% in the last or 50% in the last 40 years, therefore it's good. What they didn't tell you is they tracked a lot of those same countries that you mentioned that don't fluoridate, and cavities were coming down in those countries at the same rate. So fluoride is not really a factor in that. What's the factor is that people are taking better care of their teeth and they're brushing more.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like something similar that happened with vaccines when the rates were already coming down because of indoor plumbing and other such issues. And suddenly they're like, oh, it's the vaccines that are doing it when, maybe that's not actually correct.
Yeah, in fact, the original, and pardon me for taking over the mic here, but the original study that they used to justify fluoridation at all was the one that was done in Grand Rapids, Michigan. It was supposed to be a 15-year study. I think it started in 47 or 37. I forget exactly. But it was going to be a 15-year study. And the control that they used that was the non-fluoridated community was Muskegon, just 40 miles away. And about halfway through that 15-year study, they found the cavities in Grand Rapids were coming down. They threw up their hands, declared victory, and started the propaganda machine going on it. What they didn't tell you, again, this is government science, right? What they didn't tell you is that in Muskegon, cavity rates were coming down at the exact same rate because all this talk about teeth had people brushing more. Okay, so again, it's been a hoax from the start.
Mm-hmm. And we had another guest just hop in the studio here, John Bush, the owner of Brave New Books here in Austin, Texas. And I wanted to have him just tell you a little bit about, we're doing a charity poker tournament every Thursday, and part of the proceeds are actually going to help get fluoridated water, out and, clean, healthy water in for some people. Could you tell us a little bit more about the charity, John?
Sure. Before I do that, though, I wanted to answer Dr. Lisa's question about why the fluoridation began in the first place. It's something that I've researched pretty intensively. There's this awesome book called The Fluoride Deception by Christopher A. Bryson, who's an investigative journalist. And basically, it came about because the Manhattan Project, which was responsible for creating the atom bomb, they were using a lot of fluoride in the enrichment of uranium, that whole process. Simultaneously, as World War II was ramping up and the war machine, the industry back at the States, there was a lot of aluminum that was being used to make weapons of mass destruction and planes and ships. And at the same time, there were factory workers who were beginning to fall ill from exposure to this fluoride gas. And they were emitting gas that was taking out entire towns and entire farms. And people started to seek remedy through the courts. So all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you have court cases that are springing up that are saying this fluorine gas and this fluoride waste is poisoning our crops and killing our workers. So rather than deal with that and potentially halt the growth of the war machine and hinder the World War II war effort, the United States government, along with this guy named Charles Hodge, who was leading up the Manhattan Project, and others, they enlisted Edward L. Bernays, the father of modern propaganda, nephew of Sigmund Freud, who had just recently told pregnant mothers that smoking is good for you and your child. They basically started a massive propaganda campaign with all sorts of phony junk science. The Grand Rapids, Michigan, just one of those examples. And they convinced the entire public that fluoride is so good, we should add it to our water, and it can't possibly be killing all these people because, after all, we drink it every day, and it's good for our teeth. The whole thing was a fraud from the get-go for about going on like 75 years now.
And that story is exactly true. When you think about what happened, they decided they were going to run this trial. We'll get to that when we come back.
Cool. Heading to another break here. So after the break, we'll be back with Sam, and then John will tell us a little bit more about the charity so you can help out get fluoride out of water where you're at, too.
There's a spooky new search engine on the internet, and you've probably already been caught in its web. You'd be amazed what it knows and how it gets its information. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht, and I'll tell you more in just a moment.
Privacy is under attack. When you give up data about yourself, you'll never get it back again. And once your privacy is gone, you'll find your freedoms will start to vanish too. So protect your rights, say no to surveillance, and keep your information to yourself. Privacy, it's worth hanging on to. This public service announcement is brought to you by StartPage.com, the private search engine alternative to Google, Yahoo, and Bing. Start over with StartPage.
Spokeo.com boasts that it's not your grandma's white pages. How true. Spokeo is a creepy website that specializes in digging up personal information about people and their families. It goes beyond public source information like tax records and delves into the deep internet to dig up gems like the names of your children, your age, your home value, your income, hobbies, and even photographs. Then it posts all this information on its website, making it available to every Tom, Dick, and Harry without your knowledge or consent. I highly recommend searching for your own name at Spokeo.com and following the procedure for removing your listing. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht for StartPage.com, the world's most private search engine.
You're listening to the Logos Radio Network at logosradionetwork.com.
All right, everyone. This is Nourishment for the Spiritual Warrior. It is Saturday, March 5th. Some of my time-traveling friends in Australia, I believe it is the next day, quite early in the morning, with David and Andrew. Elisa is in Las Vegas. In the studio here, we have Sam Brannon. And just before the break, we were talking with John Bush, who owns Brave New Books, and he gave us some excellent information as to the origination of how fluoride originally got put in the water. And now I'd like to switch over to some solutions. So, John, if you can just take a second here, let us know a little bit about the charity that you have and then how people can help participate and donate that during the poker playing that we have going on Thursday, the tournaments every week.
Sure. Yeah, I've been fighting water fluoridation here in Austin for the past 7 years, unsuccessfully. Not our fault, though. The city council is just so dang stubborn, and we thought it would be different with the 10-1 city council member districts, single-member districts, but it wasn't. And we got the environmental board to pass something, the public utility board, and brought in Dr. Conant, and time again, the city council still didn't do a dang thing, so that was unfortunate. And my passion for the issue was renewed when I found out that my daughter, Aliana, actually has dental fluorosis, which tragically, we were living down in Creedmoor, which is just outside of Austin, southeast Travis County, on a 2.5-acre farmstead. And we elected not to install the fluoride components of our Berkey water filter because we were under the impression that the water supply that we had, which wasn't Austin's water, it was Creedmoor, a small municipal utility district, was unfluoridated. Well, so we didn't put the fluoride filters on. We filtered everything else, but not the fluoride filters. And this is while my wife was pregnant with our daughter. Well, there was a drought, so that municipal water supply started getting water from the Lower Colorado River Authority, which also supplies Austin with some of its water. And come to find out, the entire time my wife was consuming water that was fluoridated at 1.1 parts per million, which is usually 0.11 parts per million. It's usually 0.08, I think. That's the level. So it was higher than average levels. And this fluoride passed the blood-brain barrier and gave my daughter dental fluorosis. So it's a complete tragedy and irony that we were so trying to avoid the fluoride, and we ended up having it impact our daughter. So I knew that the political channel wasn't working here in Austin. Thankfully, San Marcos had a wonderful group of activists that were pounding the pavement in the years leading up to that effort. And it's a lot easier to impact change in a smaller community than it is one of the biggest cities in the country. So we decided to take matters into our own hands. We have a 501c3 called the Center for Natural Living. The mission is to demonstrate the value of voluntary cooperation and natural living in the areas of sustainability, family, and health by creating educational media and helping families to fulfill their basic needs. So we launched a program called the Austin Safe Water Initiative, where we raised money and we purchased fluoride water filters to give to low-income families, especially families that were pregnant or that had young children. And we ended up distributing a good 20 of these filters or so. And right now we are working on revamping that program. So every Thursday, you can come down to Brave New Books at 1 o'clock, 12:30 to 1 o'clock. The poker starts every Thursday here, and you can take place in a charity poker tournament to support the Center for Natural Living, along with the nonprofit affiliated with the Burt guys. And the money that we bring in for the Center for Natural Living will go towards purchasing more fluoride filters. And coming up in the next couple months, we're going to go ahead and put this out to the public, where we encourage people to call and do the inputting process, where basically they just give us their name and their information, and we ask them if they want to have a fluoride filter but can't afford it, and they check yes, and that's basically the qualification. It's an honor-based system. So look out for that coming up in the future. We're going to put the call out again through 89.1 and through all of our social media channels, and encourage families, especially families with young children, especially pregnant mothers, to call in, to give us their information. And depending on how much money we've raised, we'll be able to buy hopefully 50 or maybe even 100 fluoride water filters to get those families. Because again, it's a lot of left progressives like to use the term social equity. I'm not a big fan of the term, but at the end of the day, what it means is that some low-income families or underprivileged or people that live in marginalized communities, they don't get an equal shot. And unfortunately, if you're low income, you can't afford access to clean water. Maybe all you can afford to do is barely even pay the water bill, and you can't afford a $70 filter or $300 filter. So we want those in need who want to avoid fluoride to be able to do so. So check out centerfornaturalliving.org. It's the Austin Safe Water Initiative. And I want to thank the Burt guys and Lance and the guys that help us with the poker tournament for giving us the opportunity to bring in more money so we can free these families from the terrible, terrible, terrible industrial waste that is fluoridated water.
Beautiful, John.
Thank you.
And that is every Thursday here at Brave New Book. Show up anytime between 12 and 1. Usually starts at 1. And you don't have to be an expert in poker. You know, it's not like there's going to be a bunch of ringers or Andrew Lucky Chewy's just stacking the tables. There are prizes that are given away, which is kind of nice. And there's a variety of donation levels that, you know, you can actually get in with, I think, $10, $20. And, we're very accommodating to people to be able to start learning poker, which, is a passion for all of us. Andrew has done extremely well. And so we want to provide that to everyone else, and being able to donate to a good cause at the same time, it's a win-win for everyone. So come on down Thursday to Brave New Books, between 12 and 1 o'clock, and give it a shot.
Yeah, you're having fun and you're supporting a great charity that benefits the community.
And just earlier where Sam was talking about dental fluorosis and John talking about dental fluorosis, in the article on fluoridealert.org, dental fluorosis rates in the United States from 1950 through 2004. And according to their charts there, which you can go to the website and see for yourself, 41% of the national average of 12 to 15-year-old kids have dental fluorosis.
41?
Yeah, and I think before they started fluoridating, it was more like in the 10% range. So it's gone up a great deal since then.
Yeah, in 1950, it was approximately 10%. And now we're looking at 41% in that was 2010.
And the interesting thing about the fluorosis, the dental fluorosis, is not just superficial stain on the teeth. What the science has said is it's systemic in how the bone develops, and the bones come out more brittle. And they've got a number, but it's not just cosmetic, and that's what people need to understand. The cosmetic is a pointer to something wrong in the system.
What was the most difficult obstacle you ran into, Sam? Were there any key individual people or certain groups? I'm assuming that, the people that are utilizing this method to get rid of this waste have a lot of money lobbying to make sure that this doesn't happen, or else I think they would have to pay a lot of money to get rid of this hydrofluorosilicic acid from their factories. So I guess what kind of groups did you run into, or maybe individuals that you could tell were maybe protecting these interests?
Well, certainly everybody at the city and the city council, I mean, it was just so far beyond their realm to even consider this, in spite of the fact that we gave them some very good information to work off of. We were a little bit surprised that during the campaign, we didn't really have an opponent come forward. There was one dentist that, we got into the League of Women Voters debate, which is kind of a local tradition in San Marcos and many other places. And we got the issue on the agenda there. And a dentist came out, and we were sitting at the table together as me and a dentist, which is slightly intimidating when you're talking about teeth to be sitting next to a dentist. But on the other hand, the facts were on our side. When I brought out the fact that, okay, so in the pharmaceutical industry, before a drug ever makes it to market, they put it through what they call a randomized controlled trial, and that's the benchmark in pharmaceuticals. And fluoride has never been put through a randomized controlled trial. They've been doing it for 70 years. They're promoting the health effects. And randomized controlled trial, it tells you whether or not there's any health danger and whether or not it does what it says it will, and it's never been done. So we brought out points like that to which he couldn't answer. This dentist even admitted that there was lead and arsenic in the concoction and that it was a hazardous waste, and still recommended it be put in our water. I don't think a health professional should be anywhere near that side of the issue.
Yeah, I mean, when we look at health from a international perspective, in the statistics we found when we were researching our book that Dr. Elisa and myself wrote, we find the U.S. is ranked, I think Elisa was around 56 in the world in healthcare. And
somewhere around there.
So many other countries ahead of us are doing studies. You can go to fluoridation.com/fluoride-in-drinking-water.htm. And after the break, we're going to talk a little about that and how they're actually doing studies, and we need to catch up.
Descends to the earth, a time where the mind is defined and confined. We the people need to realign with the divine, and government for the people by the people realigns. No more taxation without representation. It's time for the people to have their say, no longer the prey. Aligned with truth, there's nothing we cannot do. Divide and conquer lies and false promises. These are the archonic weapons of hurtful decay. The abundance of the earth is the perfect technology, and the golden age is now. Rise together as one in peace and prosperity. Are hacking the bio-internet, and the false light is blinding. Plugging into intuition, balance is restored. Drawing from love, fighting for freedom and liberty keeps the unity in the community. Good habits becoming better, refining the mind. Accepting divine impunity, we rise as one in unity. Life is a circle, life is eternal. The ancient wisdom opens the way. Together, we are the generation.
Hello, and welcome back to the show, Nourishment for the Spiritual Warrior. We are talking about water fluoridation and how toxic the chemical is, fluoride, that they add to our water supply, and what we can do to remove it, how we can get it out of our drinking water. David had a couple of studies about the dangers of fluoride. Is that correct, David?
Well, around the world in the international community, there are so many countries that aren't putting fluoride in their water, including China, which banned fluoride in the water. And if you go to two great websites, fluoridealert.org or fluoridation.com. There are many, many studies, and you can see why the rest of the international community is not putting such things in their water. We've got studies on the site that are showing that there have been in these international studies the reduction of IQs in these tests. And so when we're trying to compete as in the US with the international community on technology, with research, academic research, in China, in India, which India is, very much a tech powerhouse. We toured India in New Delhi, and we got to see where Microsoft is there, Dell is there, the number one computer tech university in the world is in India. And we're trying to compete on a academic level with these powerhouse countries, and they're not putting fluoride in their water. But kids in America are getting fluoride in theirs, and they're citing studies why they're not fluoriding because of maybe reductions in IQ. So we're at kind of a junction point where, are we going to start taking note on why other countries are not doing it, what their studies are, and are we going to begin catching up to these other countries when we begin looking at the U.S. healthcare system? In Newsweek, August 2005, Americans ranked 46th in life expectancy, and healthcare is the number one cause of death in the United States, according to an article from the nonprofit group Nutrition Institute of America. And Sam, it's incredible that you and your team in San Marcos have been able to educate so many people and educate the council on the law to be able to remove what is being classified now in this that medical journal, fluoride being a neurotoxin. And what type of studies or what type of information really stuck out in your mind when you began your journey of learning about fluoridation in water?
Yeah, we used as a resource the Fluoride Action Network, and the website for that is, as you mentioned, fluoridealert.org. And that's Dr. Paul Connett and his team, and they've been at the forefront of this discussion globally for years. And they've done such a magnificent job. They're the ones that go out and find the studies, and they post them, and they find articles that are written about those studies that put them in lay terms. And that's the central clearinghouse that our team used down there. And, there were all kinds of studies and articles. And if you go on YouTube, there's some very, very, very educated scientists on this topic you can find. So we were just gathering, and then the studies are one thing to help convince us, but then you've also got to turn that into something that people can digest too. So you can't, just throw a scientific study at somebody. You've got to really think about the terms that you talk to them and how you engage them. So, it was just, we had dozens and dozens and dozens of people involved in this, and luckily we put it together, I guess, in an acceptable fashion for the community.
Yeah, here's a study, IQ study number 49 on fluoridation.com in Mondale in 2015. This location study was in India. It involved 40 children was a sample size, 20 where there is a fluorosis area and 20 from a control area. Subjects were 10 to 14 years old. The source of fluoride was the water. And in the conclusion, students of the study area that have less IQ, students of the study area have less IQ than students of a non-contaminated area, demonstrating the consumption of fluoride also has a major role with the intellectual development of children. And that's a 2015 study in India. And then there's another study in 2015 in India also, where the conclusion once again was that the data from this research may spot a hypothesis that excess fluoride in drinking water has toxic effects on the nervous system. And, these are actual studies. And, just hearing Sam talk about how little people are informed or educated about fluoride and what fluoride can do to the body and about studies that are out about fluoride, it's really hard to understand why anyone's trying to reject that people have a choice whether to put fluoride in the water that they're drinking or not.
Isn't
that is true.
Fluoride a rat poison, David? Don't you remember we had found some studies about that? They put it in pesticides and rat poison.
Yeah, they used to sell sodium fluoride as rat poison.
Okay.
That's the stuff that goes in, that dentists use, and the stuff that goes in toothpaste.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So even the stuff in toothpaste is rat poison.
That's what they sold it as. I presume it worked.
I mean, that's
actually found an article here, Lisa, on Natural News. It says nearly all conventional food crops grown with fluoride-laced water, then sprayed with more fluoride. So I guess they're blending it in with the pesticides and herbicides. So if you're eating conventional food, there's also the concern that while the plant is growing, the root system's uptaking that fluoride, and it's, you know, becoming very much part of the plant before it's even served to you.
Yeah, it's really bizarre. I mean, at the base level, this is a waste management product performed by the federal government on behalf of the phosphate, fertilizer, and aluminum industries. Because, you know, just as somebody described earlier, it was, you know, killing everything around those plants. And they said, well, we can't really stop industry, so we're just going to have to dilute it by spreading it out far and wide. So, you know, don't ever let anybody tell you it's anything other than that. It's a waste management program.
Wow, I'm looking at water. Water is just, you know, H2O. We all learned that in our high school chemistry class. And when we look at rainwater is H2O. And something fascinating about rainwater, it's also the same as distilled water, H2O. So when you look at how the sun, you know, pulls up the water into the clouds, and then the clouds rain and the water comes down, those plants are getting, you know, H2O. So when we say that the body needs water, what we're really saying is the body needs H2O. It doesn't need all these other extra things. And a really simple solution for people, like John was talking about, you know, people who are a low income, or even just people who are self-empowered and want, you know, simple solutions, is you can very affordably buy a water distiller. We ourselves have water distillers, and you can distill your water and filter it, and then you can add back your minerals. We add back colloid minerals back into our water, so our water is mineralized, and drink that. And interesting enough, in Sydney, one of their big sellers now in Woolworths, which is a grocery store of theirs, is fluoride-free, chlorine-free, BPA-free water. And it's 100% tested. And people are very excited about this offering here.
Yep, the brand is Puro, Pureau. And
well,
yeah, it's a great option.
Very cool. And what Dave was saying too, if you go to the website he mentioned earlier, the fluoridation.com, it lists some of the countries and some of the reasons that these countries give. You can actually go there and read the actual letter from the, you know, basically the Ministry of Health or the Department of Health that wrote these letters. And a lot of them say, like for Belgium, encourages self-determination. Those who want fluoride should get it themselves. Finland, there are better ways of providing the fluoride our teeth need. Another really interesting one, Japan, may cause health problems. And Hungary was stopped for technological reasons in the 60s and still remains unfluoridated to this day. But reading some of the letters, what a lot of them are saying is that if it is medicinally needed for the teeth and too much or too little could be a problem, then every individual person needs different dosages. You can't just randomly put it in the water and expect everyone to get this proper dose that they need. And it's the same thing with these vaccines or whatever else they're doing too. Every person's an individual, and I'm sure, you know, Dr. Lisa from Chinese medicine could, you know, concur with that the best way you work with individuals is you treat them as an individual. You don't just group them into a huge group and just give them all the same, you know, drugs, because that's not always the correct solution. There's different problems which may end up with the exact same, you know, conditions.
Yes, that's absolutely true. Everybody is an individual. So what works for one person may not work for another person. So definitely on an individual basis, it's important. And, you know, with regard to the minerals in the body, just eating organic, fresh fruits and vegetables should give you all of the minerals that you need, especially drinking juices. So all these minerals that are needed by the body, including, let's say, fluorite, which is actually, you know, fluorite is different from fluoride. And we can just get all the minerals we need by eating a healthy diet. It's really very simple.
Very true. Coming up to our big break, more with Sam and getting fluoride out of your water here on Nourishment for the Spiritual.
War is coming.
Hello, everybody. My name is Andrew Lucky Tree Lichtenberger. I'm here in Sydney, Australia, with my good friend David Burke. We have Elisa Wampole in Las Vegas, and our lovely guest Sam Brannon, and co-host Brian Mutzel in Austin, Texas. Today's March 6th, 2016, Sunday in Australia. And just before the break, we're having a lovely chat about fluoride and what may be a large misconception that the public has, that I know I certainly had growing up. My mother gave me fluoride pills because, it's apparently good for your teeth when you're young. But as we've come to find out, maybe it's not all it's been cracked up to be by the medical industry. And yeah, it's lovely getting the information out there and seeing the hard facts and studies and finding out, what is this actually and what is it doing to my body when I ingest it.
Very true. And we were talking a little bit about this during the break, about the possibility, everyone here at Brave New Books and myself would love to see fluoride out of the water here in Austin. And I think, Sam, you had mentioned an interesting story, I think, that you said you could tell us about maybe the way it's going about in the political circles, just fluoridation. And, maybe this will be some interest for anyone here in the Austin who wants to maybe take the lead on this fluoridation issue and, make this the place where, the fight goes down and where a large city such as Austin can actually get fluoride out of the water.
Yeah, in a lot of places where fluoride has been challenged, it's come from the environmental left. So once we got this started, I mentioned it was a group of conservatives that were getting it started. And, our purpose was we're against mass medication. It's against all medical ethics. It's my body. I should be able to decide. But we did approach some of the leaders of the environmental left in San Marcos. And, it could be that it had something to do with me and they knew who I am, didn't really want to team up on a project for whatever reason, however good it might be. But then what we also found is, we've got some people that are, quote unquote, good environmentalists on our city council. And privately, a couple of them are saying, hey, we're really on your side. We're going to do what we can behind the scenes. But there's also an environmental person on the council that wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. And so, talking around through different people, I ran into one of the activists up here in Austin at a function, and she said that she had somewhere at home, and she was going to look for it, and I guess she hadn't found it yet, but a letter from a congressman's wife to one of the city council members about 6 or 8 years ago that said, under no circumstances can you permit City of Austin water to become unfluoridated. So it wasn't exactly from the congressman, it was from his wife, but I think that's the approach that's taken to chill some of the political support. And I'm pretty sure that was a carryover effect down in San Marcos, that when the new council members that said they were supportive of us would come in and they would sit quietly while they rejected our petition, while they sued us, while they put a different amendment on the ballot. I think the conversation, from what I could gather from a little bit here and a little bit there, went, hey, listen, you're on the city council now. We have some very important initiatives that we need to get pushed through. You're not going to get caught up in this fluoride thing. If you get caught up in that, it's going to hurt us other places. So I think there's a lot of systemic and political ways that they go about trying to chill this discussion at the city council levels. And, just be aware that, the former head of the National Cancer Institute had written some stories on it, or he was a subject of a interview that was being done. And one of the questions that was posed to him is, when is the government going to relent on this? He said, they never will. They never, ever will. So, I think that's kind of what we're up against. We've got to just take it to the people and get the people behind it. And if we can take it out of elected officials' hands and out of politicians' hands, we're better off for it.
Sam, why do you think the government wants to keep this fluoride in our water?
Well, I've heard a lot of stories, and, from time to time, if I repeat them, people start calling me a conspiracy theorist, so I'm not even going to go down that path. But at the end of the day, it's a hazardous waste project. Is to be able to get rid of hazardous waste. They're making money doing it.
Right. In the very least, it's a financial incentive.
Oh, it would cost them billions to dispose of this waste properly. Billions and billions and billions of dollars a year. And this way they get paid a little bit for it.
Wow. Very nice. I've also heard issues with the pineal gland. Some of the other things I know, Dr. Elisa, too, some of the supplements yourself and Dave put together in the Burke Superfoods lines are helpful in, I know, some radiation and also getting some heavy metals out of the body. Could you go over a few of those for the listeners that,
Sure.
If they're living in a place that still has fluoride in the water, what they can use to possibly combat that?
Yes. So in general, products that get heavy metals out of the body are going to be useful for detoxing your body from fluoride. Because a lot of us, we just didn't know. And like Andrew said, took fluoride pills when we were younger, had fluoride treatments, even just excessively using fluoride toothpaste, which, by the way, you can buy fluoride-free toothpaste at the health food store. So in addition to getting the fluoride out of your body, stopping to consume the fluoride, then you can also get it out using heavy metal detox supplements, such as chlorella. Chlorella is a green algae, and it is known for getting heavy metals out of the body. Also, another really great one is zeolite. Zeolite and Burke Superfoods carries both chlorella and zeolite. Something interesting about zeolite, the first time I took it, I had been taking it for about 3 weeks, and at one point I went to scratch my earlobe, and out of my ear hole came a whole piece of metal. And I was really, shocked. And then I felt my other ear, and the same thing. I got a whole piece of metal. I thought, oh, did an earring break inside of my ear, or what happened? I couldn't figure it out. It seemed very odd that I would have a broken earring in each ear, but then I realized it was the heavy metals being pressed back out of my skin and detoxed from the zeolite. So that was a kind of a wild experience that I had, but I know that it works from that experience. So zeolite will get toxic metals, including fluoride, out of your body. Also, shilajit is another one that people use for getting fluoride out of the system. And all of those products are carried by the Burke Superfoods line. You can pick those up at Brave New Books, or you can order them online at burkesuperfoods.com.
And Elisa, there's an interesting quote by Dr. Dean Burke, PhD. He spent 34 years at the National Cancer Institute in the U.S., and this is his opinion from his experience and his as being a researcher. In point of fact, fluoride causes more human cancer death and causes it faster than any other chemical. And this is a gentleman with, once again, 34 years of experience at the National Cancer Institute. And if you go to another website, bodymindsoulspirit.com, they have a little fact sheet on fluoride, did you know? And it says in 1955, Crest became the first fluoride toothpaste. And in their article, they say fluoride calcifies the pineal gland, which literally has rods and cones just like your other eyes. And fluoride is so toxic that it's considered hazard waste by the EPA. It says that Hitler fluoridated the water in the concentration camps to sedate prisoners. And fluoride is the same ingredient in rat poison and Prozac. And you can go to their website, bodymindsoulspirit.com, and you can read their little information packet yourself on fluoride.
Yeah, it's really quite shocking. All of these people that have actually come out and put all this information together in the case against fluoride, and it's so important to get it out of the water you're drinking. To get, and I would say go as far as not using fluoride toothpaste and things with fluoride, because there's a lot of evidence that it calcifies the pineal gland. And even if you just type in calcified pineal gland into the Google images, you'll see some interesting photos. And, and this gets into the little bit of kind of alternative thinking, alternative medicine, and talking about the chakra system and yoga. But the pineal gland in alternative thought and in yogic science is responsible for your intuition. The pineal gland is connected with the sixth chakra, which is about intuition and getting insight. You could say ESP. So if your pineal gland is calcified, then you're basically putting a hood over your intuition, and you're not able to be in tune with your higher spirit. So again, it's really important to get the fluoride out of your system and decalcify your body. And go ahead, Andrew.
I was just going to say, I found on fluoridealert.org an article about the pineal gland, and it says here, the pineal gland has the highest levels of fluoride in the body. As a calcifying tissue that is exposed to a high volume of blood flow, the pineal gland is a major target for fluoride accumulation in humans. In fact, the calcified parts of the pineal gland, hydroxyapatite crystals, contain the highest fluoride concentration in the human body, up to 21,000 parts per million, higher than either bone or teeth. So yeah, it's definitely something to be aware of.
And the great American seer Edgar Cayce, who would go into a sleeping state and come up with all these interesting predictions, one of his quotes was, "Keep the pineal gland operating and you won't grow old. You'll always be young."
Yeah, it's true, because the pineal gland is responsible for giving the directions to the endocrine system, and it's a huge vital part in dealing with your body's hormones and responses. I mean, it's such an important gland. And if fluoride adversely affects it, then we're really screwing up our system by ingesting this toxic substance.
There's a website you can go to, Illuzone, ILLUZONE.net, and it's about educating yourself. And this is a short list they've put together on fluoride side effects. And we'll go into more of them after break, but just a few of them are cancer, brain damage in unborn fetus, bone weakness, dental fluorosis, joint problems, damaged stomachs.
You are listening to the Logos Radio Network. LogosRadioNetwork.com.
Hello, everyone. We are back on Nourishment for the Spiritual Warrior, Saturday, March 5th in Austin. If you're time traveling in Australia with David and Andrew, it's Sunday, March 6th. So had a great discussion so far. John Burke came on from Brave New Books, gave us a little history of fluoride. We also have, some great discussions between all of us about how fluoride got in the water and, what we can do to get out of it. So during the break, we were talking a little bit about things individuals can do to not have to wait for these city councils to get fluoride out of the water. And some of the topics that were brought up were getting your own filters essentially to get fluoride out of the water, or just using a distiller, which all of us, myself, David, Andrew, and Elisa use. We also talked about getting shower heads that will also help get fluoride and some of the other metals out of the water. So there are individual things you can do as an individual person to, not wait for some group to get this fluoride bills passed. And you can protect yourself right now along with those methods and taking some of the supplements Dr. Elisa mentioned, such as the chlorella and the zeolite and the shilajit, to naturally detox your body from this fluoride, as well as other, heavy metals and radiation. So, guys, any other thoughts on what individuals can do to protect themselves against, this industrial profiteering?
Well, we had mentioned before, Brave New Books sells some water filters. That's correct?
That's right.
Are they reverse osmosis, I think? Or, it's that plus the fluoride filter.
Yeah, let's go. I'll bring John back on for a second, and maybe we could. Hey, John, could you hop on here for a second? Let them know about what water filters are available here.
Thank you. So we have the clearly filtered pitcher, which is like a Brita, except it gets out fluoride and all sorts of stuff, way more than a Brita. It retails for $79.99, and I believe the wholesale price is like around $45. So for every $45 that we bring in or someone donates, we'll be able to get a family fluoride free. Then we sell the Pro Pure water filtration systems. These are countertop gravity-fed filters, and they have two chambers, one on top that you fill water in. The largest one's Pro Pure King. It costs $349.99. It's good for a family of 4 or more, and it actually fits 4 gallons worth of water. So you fill 4 gallons of water on top. It slowly drips through a carbon filtration system that has an outer cover that's impregnated with colloidal silver, so it doesn't get moldy or have any bacteria grow on it. And probably about 15, 20 minutes later, you have your full 4 gallons completely filtered. The Pro Pure comes in 3 different sizes, and they start at $225 for the Nomad, which is 1.75 gallons. And then there's actually a smaller one called a Scout that costs $100. And these are stainless steel, real fancy. They look great in your kitchen. And if you have a larger family, you can get the Pro Pure King. There's also a big size, which is in the middle of the Nomad and the King. It's called Pro Pure Big. That one's $289. But right now, we're giving 10% of any purchase of a fluoride filter we're going to put towards the fund to purchase these water filtration systems for these low-income families. So come down and see us. We don't have them in stock right now, but I need to order more. There's also something called the ProPure Life Straw, and it's a little straw. It costs like $13.95. And you could take it with you if you travel, or here in town. I'm always anxious about drinking the fluoridated water at the restaurants and stuff. Although not anymore in San Marcos, which is really cool. Of course, you still have radium and all the pharmaceuticals, chlorine, all that stuff. We got a ways to go. But this little straw, you can keep it in your purse or take it in your pocket, and you can use it at restaurants, so you can be a little more consistent with avoiding the fluoride, because it's everywhere.
I'm really glad you guys are doing that, John, because what people have traditionally gone to is reverse osmosis, and A, they're much more expensive filters, and B, they're big water wasters. The industry says that for every gallon that you put through RO, there's 3 gallons of waste, but that's if it's the right filter operated the right way. Usually there's about 10 to 15 gallons of wasted water for every purified, which is not very environmental. So I like the way you do it better, and the price point is much better. So
people can order them online at bravenewbookstore.com. We could drop ship them and have them arrive at your door within 3 to 5 days. bravenewbookstore.com. We also have the website, thefluoridefilterstore.com. So check that out if you want to go ahead and get one. And again, 10% of those online purchases as well will go to the Center for Natural Living for our Safe Water Initiative.
And are you still doing your 10% discount for open carry here at Brave New Books?
Yep, open carry firearm down here in the great state of Texas to Brave New Books. You get 10% off on any product in the store.
And I definitely felt quite safe the other day when Alex Jones and Roger Stone were down here, and half the audience was open carrying, and I figured I think I was in the safest place in Austin, if not the world, at that time. I mean, everyone was ready to to protect each other. It was a great feeling.
That's right. So long as everyone exercises firearm safety, because you got to be careful in a big crowd like that. But we can assume that those in our tribe are well versed in the art of self-defense.
Absolutely. If you're in Austin, take a class at Michael Cargill's Central Texas Gunworks. I believe you just took another one, didn't you, John?
Yeah, it was great. It was really informative and fun, and it ends out the day going to the shooting range. So what was your score? You remember?
I ended up with, what was it out of total?
Out of 250.
I got 230, 235 maybe?
I got 237. Good shooting.
Yeah. Right in there. Very cool.
Good job, Ryan. One other thing I wanted to add on this fluoride discussion is if you think you're avoiding fluoride by drinking bottled water, think again, because there are a lot of bottled water companies that add fluoride or that have fluoride in their water. I have a list here of a bunch of bottled water companies that have fluoride, and I'm going to read a couple of the big names. Bottled water, oh, by the way, this list comes from www.realpharmacy, and that's pharmacy with an F, REALFARMACY.com.
As it should be.
Yes, pharmacy from the farm. And it basically states here in an article on their site, fluoride is a toxic waste from the phosphate fertilizer industry, which we've been talking about. And then the list below contains data provided by the International Bottled Water Association that you can use to make sure you're not feeding fluoride to yourself and your family. And bottled water containing fluoride. We've got Alhambra, Arrowhead, Crystal Rock, Crystal Springs, Diamond Springs. There's more. I'm skipping over some of these because there's a long list. Ice Mountain, Nursery Water, Ozarka, Poland Spring, Puritan Springs, Sparklets, Nestle Waters North America Incorporated, Diamond Springs Water Company, Premium Waters Incorporated, Pure Flow Water Company, and Nestle's listed a bunch of times here for whatever reason. So those are just a few of the, and I know I've bought Arrowhead water before and thinking, oh, it's coming from springs, right? It's a spring water, but there's fluoride in there according to this website. So really do your research. And I think we were talking earlier, there's not very many bottled water companies that you can really be sure don't have fluoride unless you're buying distilled water, which sometimes I buy at the store, and I'm hoping that they're not putting anything in your distilled water. But you can test your distilled water if you have a little particle tester device, which I've done, and it should come out 0. And if your distilled water comes out as 0 particles, then you know that your water is totally clean. So that's one way of also getting fluoride out of your water, is to just use a water distiller.
And Ryan, I know you're at UT and you're doing your master's in kinesiology, and has the discussion ever come up in your sports performance classes of, should we be putting fluoride in the water of athletes if we want them to be successful in their sports?
We have not discussed anything concerning fluoride, which I think would actually be a very interesting study to do. for whatever reason, I know we've talked a couple times, the studies just
Attention everyone who gains a few pounds each winter. You may be too warm and cozy for your own good. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht, and I'll be back in just a moment to explain why you might want to turn down the heat.
Privacy is under attack. When you give up data about yourself, you'll never get it back again. And once your privacy is gone, you'll find your freedoms will start to vanish too. So protect your rights, say no to surveillance, and keep your information to yourself. Privacy, it's worth hanging on to. This public service announcement is brought to you by StartPage.com, the private search engine alternative to Google, Yahoo, and Bing. Start over with StartPage.
A new study suggests the trend for warmer indoor temperatures could be making people fatter and contributing to the obesity epidemic. University College London researchers explain that when the weather turns cold, our bodies are designed to burn a special kind of fat called adipose tissue. It's supposed to keep us warm, but if our homes, businesses, and cars are already toasty, our bodies never use up the energy to burn it. As a result, it hangs on as excess fat. So consider lowering the thermostat. You'll burn more calories and you'll whittle away all that adipose fat. You'll also save on heating costs and reduce carbon emissions in the process. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht. More news and information at CatherineAlbrecht.com.
Trails. Live Free Speech Radio, LogosRadioNetwork.com.
Hello, everybody. We are back here on Nourishment for the Spiritual Warrior radio show. And just before the break, we were talking a bit about fluoride and sports performance, but I believe John Bush has an interesting tidbit to share about fluoride and how it is entering the water supply. So if you'd like to share that.
I in my efforts against the fluoride here in Austin, I did some research to help strengthen our position when communicating with the city council. Like it made a difference. And I called the company that the city council in Austin purchases the fluoride from, and I think they buy it like twice a year, and it's like $400,000 worth of fluoride twice a year. That's actually significant impact on the budget that the fiscal conservatives, there's like two. Actually, Don Zimmerman's probably the only one. That's a great argument against it when there's a bunch of budget crises. So I called this company Lucier, which specializes in being the middleman between industry and municipal governments.
Yay, more middleman.
Yeah, and they communicated to me the name of the actual phosphate fertilizer company in Florida that they purchase the hydrofluorosilicic acid from. So I called this company, I forget the name, I think it's Mosaic, and I talked to someone, a representative there, and I basically got them to admit to me that the substance, the hydrofluorosilicic acid, that makes its way to Austin water is completely untreated. They don't mess with it. They don't synthesize it. They don't clean it. They don't filter it. They don't process it. They don't do anything to it. It's literally the waste, the vapors from the fertilizer process. Rather than it escaping into the air, they put these things called scrubbers, and it traps the fluoride chemicals, and they collect it from there. They sell it to Lucier. Lucier makes a profit selling it to the municipal water suppliers, and then they put it straight in the water. And I was able to confirm verbally with both companies that there isn't any treatment done on it at all the whole way. And then when Fluoride Free Austin, the group here that's spearheading the effort to get it out here in Austin, they did a tour of one of the water treatment plants, and they saw the big storage container, and you could see that there is it's like wearing out, and there's erosion on the piping that feeds the fluoride filters in, the fluoride in and out. It's like wearing out, and there's like holes beginning to go on the floor where it drips and stuff. And this is just the stuff that's popped into the water. And there's a phrase, they say the solution to pollution is dilution. So they put it in the water so they avoid having to pay millions and millions of dollars and all sorts of EPA regulations on how they would have to get rid of it. So rather than having to pay extra money to get rid of it, they're actually able to sell it and make a profit. And it's bad news bears. And of course, there's no control for how much you take, and doctors control for different individuals, as y'all were saying, and athletes and people that work construction, for example. They're just pounding the water because they're exercising, they're losing water, they're out in the sun all day, and they're one of the communities that could be impacted the most. So I definitely think there could be something there for people that take a lot of pride in peak performance, letting them know not only, you know, if you eat non-organic foods, but also if you're drinking chemically laced water, then you could increase your your performance. That might be a little trigger for some people. A lot of people don't care about just health in general, but if you can relate it to their performance and with their athletics and stuff, maybe they'll pay a little more attention to it.
Yeah, Ryan, at UT, as I said in the break, you're doing your master's there in kinesiology. Have you ever had any of the conversations with professors on sports performance and the issue of fluoride, or any studies of athletes that aren't fluorided, how they perform?
Yeah, it's really interesting that you think that would be something that would be highly studied, but none of the professors have, heard of any studies being done. I just did a quick search now. I actually have a lot of resources through UT that link up to most of these medical journals, and I can't find anything about where fluoride is, compared in elite performance. And it would be something obviously that would take place over a longer period of time. Unfortunately, most of the studies that are done in short periods of time, either a day or they'll look at a long-term period, but they're really concerned with these bigger nutrients such as a protein, carbohydrate, and fat ratio. What ratio you should reach for an endurance athlete versus a sprinter, or what kind of training is most useful, to improve explosion. And a lot of these studies are all being funded by a lot of the companies whose results kind of depend on it. So, they'll do a study showing that milk is great, but they're comparing milk to like fluoridated water, which now that I look at that, it's absolutely hilarious. They're not comparing like, a whey protein to, a raw vegan protein or a hemp protein. They're comparing like taking protein versus not just water, fluoridated water. And so this maybe fluoridated water is being used in these studies to show that everything else is better than it, which is a very interesting effect. I did find, an interesting article here which just described, the Harvard mentioned you could improve your IQ by 8 points by eliminating fluoride. And Harvard has a study between the connection of ADHD and fluoride along with York University in Toronto. And Dr. Joseph Mercola has, some interesting thoughts on it too. And his quote, which is great, is if fluoride is really the panacea for dental disease that it's purported to be, then why is the United States one of the only developed countries that fluoridates their citizens' drinking water? And one of the main things you really have to look at here is I have done a lot of studies, and there's a lot of studies in sports performance concerning how using your mind, using your mental edge. And I know we've brought into account the study a couple times where using visualization for several weeks increased bicep strength by 30%, not even picking up the weights. So if the fluoride is affecting the pineal gland, of course it's going to be able to affect your ability to use your mental imagery to affect sports performance. But unfortunately, no studies yet.
I'm sorry. I think you raise a good point. It does affect neurological development. And you can apply that pretty much across the body. We know it affects the endocrine system. We know it affects the thyroid. We know it affects the kidneys. It's so systemic that I'm not a sports medicine person, but if it's crossing the brain barrier and affecting neurological development, it's going to impact physical output.
Mind-body connection.
Absolutely.
It's critically important.
And Elisa, I know that your father, he's a dental surgeon. He served in the United States military for a good 30, 40 years or something. And in the beginning, he, from your conversation that you told me you had with him about fluoride, in the beginning, he was not really taking a look in the fluoride subject. And then he went and spoke to another dentist who was very much on the fluoride subject. And are we seeing, just from conversations with your father, we're seeing that the dental community become a little bit more aware and pro not having fluoride in the dental process?
Yes, he told me, and this was maybe 10 years ago, that an associate of his, another dentist, sat down with him over lunch and explained to him why fluoride was not good for you and why she didn't recommend using fluoride to her patients. And she was actually really against fluoride. And unfortunately, I didn't get the details of the conversation, but my father, being very a status quo individual, he even said, wow, a lot of the points she made were pretty smart. And he tended to think that she was onto something and that maybe fluoride wasn't good for the teeth after all. And she had a pretty strong argument against it. And so my father, being a gum surgeon, he doesn't really do fluoride treatments anyway. It's not a part of what he does. And so he didn't necessarily do anything with the information, so to speak. But I think the community is becoming more aware. Unfortunately, though, your medical associations and these types of things, which train the kids at school, they're still pro fluoride as far as I know. So it's the individuals that step out of the norm and do their own research, which are making waves and hopefully going to create some change and some awareness within the community and within and hopefully among their peers. And
we have to call these medical professionals to task. You know, they come out because the ADA says it's a good thing. Dentists are inclined to go, yeah, it's a good thing. But we need to call them out and say, listen, you've already acknowledged you're putting lead in there for which there's no safe levels. You've already acknowledged you're putting arsenic for which there's no safe levels. Let's stop this.
Yeah, yes. More after the break.
Hi, and welcome back to the show. So just before we went to break, we were talking about the American Dental Association, the ADA, and how it is still promoting the use of fluoride right here on their website. I've just pulled it up. It says more than 70 years of scientific research has consistently shown that an optimal levels of fluoride in community water is safe and effective in preventing tooth decay by at least 25%. Oh boy, in children and adults. So, you know, the ADA is still training its dentists in dentistry school that fluoride is safe and it's a good thing. But clearly,
and to put that in perspective, Elisa, I mean, you know, looking at the international community, I mean, America is ranked 46 in the world in healthcare. So, I mean, I can see why a country like India and China, who ranks higher, are saying we don't need to put fluoride in the water.
Yeah, there was one dentist that I spoke with, and he was saying that in dental school, they got about 30 minutes of classroom time on fluoridation. And when somebody in the class raised the hand and said, well, wait a minute, I've heard some other stories on fluoride, the response from the professor teaching the class is, if you continue to talk about that, you may as well not, you know, plan on finishing dental school. Oh. So, you know, what we have in the United States is we have government science and we have corporate science. Yeah. And whoever's funding it is going to get the outcome that they desire, because there's huge amounts of money, and professors and all these groups that do the studies, you know, that's their living. And they're afraid to have those taps turned off because they like their nice car that they drive and they like the house that they live in. What we need to do is just be a little bit smarter than that, kind of see through and ask for the real science. And there's really no real science out there. You can pick apart every study they try to put in front of you.
Absolutely. I can agree with Sam on that, several professors that I've talked to have stated that when receiving funding from certain companies, it is sometimes written in the contract that if the results do not come out as the company wants them to, the study will not be published. And so in class, sometimes the professors will tell us about studies that came out where they have gone unpublished, you know. So the fact that a study gets published by a peer-reviewed journal, which again, I think is just absolutely hilarious, because it's just a group of people telling each other how awesome they are and just repeating the status quo. That's what a peer-reviewed journal is. So
it's more meaningful when it's a peer-reviewed study that challenges the accepted way of doing things. Those, to me, you know, there's two sides to every argument, but the one that always seems a little bit more clear to me is the one that challenges the status quo.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, people bring up, you know, these apparent studies, scientific research over 70 years, and I can't imagine when, you know, when the Mosaic company, I had just brought it up, who supplies the Austin water with the fluoride, even admits that the fluoride is dangerous and could cause death even if someone is overfluoridated. So it just seems to me that this is not being looked at. Here's the information on Natural News. It says Mosaic's very own material safety data sheet reveals the horrendous dangers associated with fluorosilicic acid, including being corrosive to skin, eyes, and mucous membranes through direct contact, inhalation, or ingestion, and it causes burns which may not be immediately apparent. Contact with the eye can instigate severe irritation, burns, and permanent damage, and overexposure to fluoride can result in death.
There you go.
So, it's absolutely ludicrous that the American Dental Association is not looking at other studies.
Well, they get a lot of industry money and they get government money, so they're going to obviously toe the line. But, here's one thing I love about this issue so much, taking it back home into your community, is their story is so flimsy and it's so easily attackable that it's almost comical that it takes as much effort as it does. I mean, we have to go through the paces, but it's an argument that we can expect to win if we stick with it. We're not going to win it politically in front of the city council, but we take it to voters, we take it to people that consume that water, and they get it. So, I think there's a lot to be said for local action. People like John Bush years ago were telling me nothing matters if it's not in your hometown. And I'm kind of, come that way. And so we just need to be out talking with our neighbors about it. It's the best thing we can do.
And that was my next question. If people want to get involved in this particular issue, what's the best way to help Austin get the fluoride out and to keep the fluoride out of San Marcos?
Well, chances are wherever you are in this world that's fluoridating, there's a movement already begun to stop it. So, what we did is we just decided, one girl brought me some papers to look at. I took it into an organization that I was familiar with, and basically you're just trying to get as many people around it as possible. And once you start to get a certain scale of people, you can begin the project. And the project is to, let's see how many people we can get interested in this. And we spent 1.5 years doing it politically. We had a lot of people come in and talk to the city council. We were advertising our meetings that grew every time we had one. And then, at a point, it's like, well, the city council's not going to respond, but we've got a pretty good set of people. We've got a couple dozen people we can add to it to get trained up to go out and start knocking doors. So, it's one of those things that we're all looking for a group or somebody to pick up this ball, and it's right in the mirror. It's going to be you in your hometown. There's probably other people that are already working on it. Join them, get them together, organize it a little bit. It can be done.
Yeah, I agree. It's just about getting out there and getting people the information about this, and what a great thing to go knocking on doors and get the support and get enough support to be able to actually get this on the voter ballot. That Absolutely. Was a huge win.
It is, and I know all of your listeners are not in the state of Texas, but we do have a very powerful tool, and that's the city charter amendment process. And the good thing about that is it's governed under state law. It's actually less of a requirement in most cities to do a city charter amendment petition than it would be to do an initiative, referendum, or recall. Most of the cities in the state of Texas have a 10% voter signature on initiative, referendum, and recall. Well, the city charter amendment governed under state process is only 5%. So it's a lower bar. They don't put a bunch of other silly stuff like the petition that was just disqualified here in Austin for another thing. It was disqualified because each page wasn't notarized. Well, that doesn't occur under the state law. So if you're in the state of Texas, please look into city charter amendment petitions and getting something on the ballot. But then you have to go run a campaign and win it too. So
right.
Yeah.
As far as you know, is San Marcos the only city in Texas right now that doesn't fluoridate?
Oh, great question. No, it's not. In 2011, the city of College Station, about 100,000 people, they stopped for one of the reasons that I think John Bush brought up earlier, is because it was eating through the piping system.
Wow.
And they were in a position where they're going to have to go replace that. And I think they were spending, seems like $20,000 a year, so not an inordinate amount on the fluoride. But they also said, well, because of the pipes and because of the cost, we may as well just get rid of it. So they did it without having to go through the big fight. I think they had an internal champion. The city of Elgin, which is a small town outside of Austin, let's see, in San Antonio, Alamo Heights does not fluoridate. By the way, Alamo Heights is probably one of the more educated, one of the higher income parts of San Antonio. In Dallas, University Park, and what is the other one up there? University Park and the two park cities, they don't fluoridate. Again, that's highly educated, high income communities. There's one just outside of Austin to the west, and its name is escaping me now, but I'll see this guy later, and he'll say, "You're stupid, you forgot my town." Lago Vista. So it's typically the places that are better educated because people can interact with the political process more easily. It's people that do have higher incomes that are actually able to get this through their city councils or fight it and keep it out. The city of Portland has voted it down multiple times. The state of California now requires fluoridation in all the cities, but San Diego's a long-time holdout. So there are, Wichita, Kansas has stopped. When we started this, the latest published number I saw was 150 communities in North America have stopped fluoridating. I'm told now that's up above, beyond 200. So this isn't, uncharted territory. It's being done everywhere, but it does require a little coordinated effort among some people that care a great deal about it.
Yeah, a great way to sum up this whole issue from the Environment Agency of the government Japan. This is an amazing letter. It says, the Japanese government and local water suppliers have considered there is no need to supply fluoridated water to all users because 1, impacts of fluoridated water on human health depends on each human being, so that inappropriate application may cause health problems of vulnerable people. And 2, there is other ways for the purpose of dental health care, such as direct F coating on teeth and using fluoridated dental paste. And these ways should be applied at one's free will. There's the key words at the end there, free will.
Amen.
So
Amen.
Coming up to the end of the show here. So thank you all for listening. If you want to catch a great fight tonight, Raw Vegan Warrior Nate Diaz up against Conor McGregor. Fight of the century there on pay-per-view. And thank you all for listening. This is Ryan Metzel here in Austin, Texas with Sam. And everyone say bye till next week.
Thank you very much.
Take care, everyone. Take care, everyone.
Bye, everybody. See you next week.